You never really know your neighbors until money, pride, and an HOA get involved. I learned that lesson the hard way when my once quiet piece of riverside property turned into the HOA's worst nightmare, and their multi-million-dollar, exclusive neighborhood learned just how much they depended on the man they tried to drive out. Let me start from the beginning. The land before the HOA. My name's Eli Porter, and I bought 10 acres of riverfront land outside of Asheville, North Carolina, nearly 20 years ago. It wasn't fancy, just a cabin, a long gravel road, and a small bridge that crossed the river to connect to the main road. That bridge wasn't county property. My grandfather had built it in the 60s with steel and timber from his own mill. For decades, it served only our family. It wasn't big enough for heavy trucks, but it worked fine for everyday vehicles. Then, about 8 years ago, everything changed when a developer bought up the surrounding farmland. Within a year, there were rows of luxury homes, a gated entrance, and a brand new homeowners association calling itself the Riverbend Estates HOA. And wouldn't you know it, their only road in or out connected to mine. The developer had built their asphalt road right through the same route my family used for generations, crossing my bridge to reach the county highway. At first, it didn't bother me. They offered to repave part of my road and maintain it in exchange for access. I thought, why not? But the HOA had other ideas. The first signs of trouble. The first president of the HOA, a woman named Cheryl Dane, was your typical Karen in pearls. She drove a Mercedes SUV, carried a clipboard, and had that tone, you know the one, that could make even a grown man feel like a misbehaving child. She came knocking one day, clipboard in hand. Greater than, Mr. Porter, she said, smiling tightly. We need to discuss the condition of your property. It's not exactly keeping with the aesthetic of Riverbend Estates. I blinked. My property. This cabin's been here 50 years before your neighborhood existed. Greater than, yes, but it's visible from the community road, she said. The residents feel it detracts from the upscale appearance we're cultivating. Perhaps you'd consider selling your land to the HOA. We'd offer a fair market price. I told her, in no uncertain terms, that I wasn't selling. I liked my privacy. From that moment on, the HOA declared war. The harassment begins. First came the complaints, noise violations, for my generator, unsightly, firewood piles, and even a notice about my unregistered vehicle, an old tractor that hadn't moved in years. Then they tried intimidation. They installed security cameras along my road, claiming it was for neighborhood safety. They even put up a gate, right before my bridge, trying to force me to use a keycard system like their residents. That was my last straw. I contacted my lawyer and got it removed. The land records clearly showed the bridge, and the road up to it, were entirely my property. But instead of backing off, Cheryl doubled down. She sent a letter through their HOA attorney demanding I cease unauthorized use of Riverbend Estates Access Road, the same road I'd owned before they existed. My lawyer sent back a polite response with one sentence. Greater than, our client owns the land and bridge upon which your access road depends. Any continued use without permission constitutes trespass. That shut them up, for a while. The maintenance accident. One morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery. I walked down to the bridge and saw 3 contractors with a backhoe tearing up the gravel at the start of the bridge. I shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" One of them looked nervous. HOA said we're just improving drainage. They had dug a trench, right across the road, deep enough to stop any vehicle from crossing. I called the sheriff, who came out and agreed it was a civil matter. Looks like they thought they were working on HOA property, he said, shrugging. You'll have to handle it through court. When I confronted Cheryl later, she smiled sweetly and said, greater than, oh, was that your access? We thought it was community property. We'll fix it eventually, once you sign an easement agreement giving us full control of the bridge. That's when I realized it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup. They wanted to make it impossible for me to reach my own land, to force me out. I wasn't about to let that happen. My plan of revenge. See, the bridge wasn't just my access. It was their only road to the main highway. Every resident of Riverbend Estates, All 52 multi-million-dollar homes used it every day to get to work, school, or anywhere else. They thought they were the ones with power, but they forgot who owned the ground under their tires. So, I hired a civil engineer and a lawyer. Together, we filed for an official easement termination, citing trespassing and damages. The HOA ignored it, assuming I'd never follow through. Meanwhile, I started quietly preparing. Over the next 2 months, I applied for a construction permit to replace and reinforce the old bridge structure. Since it was private property, I didn't need HOA approval. When the permit came through, I closed the bridge for repairs. I posted signs: private construction zone, no trespassing. That was when things got real. The day the bridge closed. At 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, a team of contractors rolled up with concrete barriers and heavy equipment. They sealed off both ends of the bridge. I stood there with my coffee, watching as the HOA members' cars started lining up, honking in confusion. Cheryl was the first to storm up to me, hair in rollers and fury in her eyes. You can't do this. You're blocking our only exit. I smiled. Exactly. Bridge is closed for safety upgrades. Shouldn't take more than, a few months. Months, she shrieked. People have jobs. Kids have school. I shrugged. You should have thought about that before you dug up my road. That day, half the neighborhood had to call off work. Emergency vehicles couldn't even get through. By sunset, the HOA called an emergency meeting, which I could hear from across the river. They were panicking. The negotiation. The next morning, Cheryl came back, this time with their lawyer. Mr. Porter, he began smoothly, the HOA is prepared to offer a settlement. You'll reopen the bridge immediately, and we'll cover repair costs. In exchange, you'll sign a permanent easement granting the HOA access. I shook my head, not interested. You realize you're holding an entire community hostage. Funny, I said. That's exactly what your HOA tried to do to me. I walked away, leaving them fuming on the far bank. Over the next week, I watched chaos unfold. Residents had to park their cars on the county side of the river and walk across a temporary plank bridge the HOA rigged up. Delivery trucks couldn't get through. Garbage piled up. One homeowner even hired a helicopter to get to the airport. Local news eventually caught wind of it. The headline read, "Luxury HOA trapped after bridge owner blocks access in legal feud." Suddenly, the story wasn't about me being difficult. It was about how a greedy HOA ignored property rights and got themselves stranded. Public opinion turned fast. The legal checkmate. 2 weeks later, my lawyer filed an injunction prohibiting the HOA from trespassing on my land until damages were paid. The county backed me up, confirming the bridge's private ownership. Then came the kicker. Their property insurance required emergency vehicle access, which they now lacked. Their premiums skyrocketed. Banks started threatening foreclosure on several homes because of non-compliant access routes. Within a month, property values in Riverbend estates plummeted by millions. That's when Cheryl finally broke. She called me, voice trembling, and said, "Mr. Porter, please, let's talk." We met on my porch. She looked exhausted, humbled, and about 10 years older. "What do you want?" she asked. I handed her a folder. "I want 3 things. 1. A written apology from the HOA for trespassing and harassment. 2. $250,000 for property damages and legal fees. 3. Permanent acknowledgement that Riverbend Estates uses the bridge under my terms, not yours." She stared at me like I'd just asked for the moon. But she didn't have a choice. 2 weeks later, I got a cashier's check and a notarized apology letter signed by all 52 homeowners. The ironic ending. I reopened the bridge, reinforced, resurfaced, and now with a steel gate at the entrance. The only people with keys. Me and the county emergency services. The HOA has to pay me a yearly maintenance fee, $30,000, as part of their settlement. Cheryl resigned soon after, for personal reasons. The new HOA president sends me a Christmas basket every year. We're not friends, but they've learned respect. The best part, property developers stopped treating my land like a nuisance. In fact, One even offered me $2 million to sell the access rights permanently. I told him no, of course. Because the bridge isn't just a crossing anymore, it's a reminder. A reminder that when you push a man too far, especially one with paperwork and patience, he might just pull the ground out from under your $1 million empire. Epilogue. Last summer, I stood by that same bridge, watching the sunset reflect off the water and the pristine mansions beyond. My old cabin creaked behind me, the air filled with the sound of crickets and rushing water. A couple of new residents walked up, waving sheepishly. One said, "Hey, Mr. Porter, thanks for keeping the bridge safe. We really appreciate it." I smiled. Long as everyone respects the land, it'll stay that way. They nodded, and I watched them drive off, crossing the bridge that reminded everyone who really held the keys. Sometimes revenge doesn't need fire or fury. Sometimes it's just a well-timed construction permit and a bridge built on solid ground.